Gemini said September 17, 2023. Romeoville, Illinois. On Concord Avenue, located 30 miles southwest of Chicago. Sunday evening is setting in. Around 9 o'clock, a patrol unit pulls up to a private residence at house number 500. The call originated from Zoraya Barolim's mother. She reported that her daughter, son-in-law, and 2 grandsons had stopped answering calls as early as Saturday, which was completely out of character for the family's routine. From the outside, everything looks routine. Cars are parked in the driveway and the lights are on inside. However, officers notice unclaimed packages left on the porch. No one responds to the knocking or demands to open the door. While checking the perimeter, one of the patrolmen peers through a window and sees an overturned dining table deep inside the house. This provides the grounds for a forced entry. Police breach the front door and step inside. A heavy silence fills the rooms, undisturbed even by the barking of dogs. In the very first room hit by the flashlight beams, the team discovers the bodies of 3 German shepherds. All the animals have been shot. Moving down the hallway toward the bedrooms, officers find the adults, 32-year-old Rolon-Barole and 38-year-old Alberto Rolon. In the adjacent room, they discover their 2 sons, aged 7 and 10. All 4 are motionless. Arriving medics confirm that every member of the family has succumbed to gunshot wounds. From this moment on, the residence on Concord Avenue is officially designated as the site of a mass crime. Forensic investigators entering house 500 on Concord Avenue begin a detailed documentation of the scene. The interior doesn't look like the site of a chaotic raid. Despite the overturned table, valuables, electronics, and jewelry remain in their places. The investigative team's primary focus shifts to ballistics. More than 20 bullets are recovered from the walls, furniture, and the victims. Specialists note the tightness of the grouping. Most shots hit their mark, indicating the perpetrator possessed a certain level of proficiency with firearms. In the kitchen, experts document the point of entry. Mesh screens on 2 windows have been neatly cut, yet the frames themselves remain undamaged. Meanwhile, the back door was found unlocked. This discrepancy becomes the first major lead. The perpetrator attempted to stage a break-in even though they had the opportunity to enter the home without obstruction. Fresh spray paint stains are visible on the walls in several rooms. The inscriptions and lines appear chaotic, typical of teenage vandalism. However, the ballistic evidence and the lack of a struggle in the bedrooms contradict the theory of an attack by random vandals. Gemini said, the positioning of the bodies in the son's room suggests that the 2 young boys never had a chance to wake up or realize what was happening. Bullet trajectories in the master bedroom indicate that rounds were fired, even through a closed door. Alberto Rolon was found in the hallway leading to his son's rooms, leading investigators to believe he was attempting to block the perpetrator's path. The dogs were taken out first, likely to eliminate any noise. Forensics concluded that this crime bore the hallmarks of a planned, targeted act, rather than a spontaneous robbery. Work at the scene stretched throughout the night as officers recovered shell casings and documented every detail of this stage scene. To understand who might have wanted to harm the entire family, detectives began digging into the lives of Rolon-Barole and Alberto Rolon. 32-year-old Zorita worked at Avanti Engineering in Glendale Heights, a large facility specializing in CNC machined parts. Colleagues described her as a dedicated employee and a social person. 38-year-old Alberto, according to relatives, was focused on his family and work with no debts or history of legal issues. The family owned their home in a quiet neighborhood and led a stable middle-class lifestyle. The couple's social media profiles over the last few months showed no hints of conflict. Only photos of family trips, holidays, and pictures of their sons canvassing the neighbors on Concord Avenue yielded no results. No one heard screams, arguments, or the sounds of aggressive behavior on Friday night or Saturday morning. The Bartle-Rolon family's typical routine didn't suggest any ties to high-risk groups. However, behind this facade were details that began to surface upon a deeper analysis of Zorita's personal contacts. Investigators established that Zorita spent a significant amount of time at work, where her social circle had narrowed to just a few people in recent months. Officers scrutinized the family's financial records, finding no suspicious transactions or large loans that might have attracted professional criminals. Detectives concluded that if there was a motive, it was rooted in personal relationships rather than financial gain. The investigation shifted its focus toward Zorita's professional environment and anyone who might have had access to her schedule. By the morning of September 18, the investigation moved into the digital realm. Police seized Ring doorbell footage from the entire block and requested data from ALPR, automated license plate readers installed at the entrances to Romeoville. Analysts scrubbed through hundreds of hours of video, logging every vehicle that passed by House 500 on the night of September 16. A light-colored sedan caught their eye, appearing on camera twice around 3 o'clock in the morning. At 3:17 a.m., the vehicle was captured on a nearby street, cutting its headlights and disappearing into the shadows of the trees. Roughly 30 minutes later, the car reappeared on camera, this time exiting the city limits at a high rate of speed. The license plate recognition system yielded a hit. The vehicle was registered to a resident of Streamwood, located about an hour's drive from Romeoville. This wasn't a random passer by or a neighbor's guest. A database check of the owner matched the employee list at Avanti Engineering. In tandem, detectives requested cell tower data from the Concord Avenue area. During the time frame in question, activity was recorded from a phone, moving in perfect sync with the spotted vehicle. The mobile signal confirms the car's owner was in the immediate vicinity of the scene at the time of the shooting. The driver's identity was established. 31-year-old Nathaniel Huey Jr. Now investigators had more than just a person of interest. They had a direct Technical link between his location and the Bartame residence. Nathaniel Huey Jr. worked at the same facility as Zorita Bartow. Detectives arrived at Avant Engineering on September 18 for an initial interview. Nathaniel agreed to speak with them. He presented himself as pointedly polite, speaking in a low, soft voice. However, officers noted that when asked direct questions about Zorita, he began to nervously fidget with his fingers and occasionally flashed an inappropriate smile. When questioned about his whereabouts late Friday night, Nathaniel claimed he was at home, though he had no one to verify this except for his domestic partner. During the conversation, Nathaniel admitted to having an extramarital affair with Zorita. The relationship began in May 2023. He explained that they communicated through Snapchat and Instagram to avoid leaving a paper trail in standard messages, meeting occasionally at hotels after their shifts. Furthermore, he claimed his domestic partner, with whom he had lived for over a decade, knew nothing of the infidelity. Detectives asked Nathaniel to voluntarily hand over his phone to verify his claims regarding the peaceful nature of his relationship with Zorita. At this point, the suspect's demeanor shifted. Nathaniel categorically refused to surrender the device, claiming it contained personal items he wanted to delete before the police began their search. He promised to come down to the station later that day. After he had put his affairs in order, investigators realized this delay would give him time to destroy evidence. But at that moment, they lacked sufficient grounds for an immediate arrest. Nathaniel was placed under covert surveillance while the legal department prepared an emergency warrant for his electronic devices. While Nathaniel Huey Jr. remained under covert surveillance, investigators focused on his inner circle. Primary link in this chain was 50-year-old Herminda Palomo. She had lived with Nathaniel in a domestic partnership for over 10 years. Their shared home was a cottage in Streamwood, a quiet community located 40 miles from the scene of the crime. At first glance, Herminda's background showed nothing suspicious. No criminal record, a stable social life, and a reputation as a loyal companion. The first official contact detectives had with Herminda occurred the same day Nathaniel was interviewed. They asked her directly about the couple's whereabouts on the night between Friday and Saturday. Herminda Palomo provided clear and confident testimony intended to serve as an ironclad alibi for Nathaniel. She claimed they spent the entire evening and night of September 16 together at their home in Streamwood. According to her, they had been drinking and never left the property until the following morning. When asked if she knew Zorita Bartome, Herminda said she did not, admitting only that she had seen the name in her partner's phone and suspected him of infidelity, but hadn't made a scene over it. However, investigators already held GPS tracker data and traffic camera footage. Information from these electronic devices directly contradicted the woman's story. Nathaniel's light-colored sedan was flagged by license plate recognition software on the route to Romeoville during the exact hours claimed she was drinking with him at Home. The false alibi provided by Palomo immediately changed her status in the case. Detectives realized she didn't just know about her partner's movements. She was actively attempting to mislead law enforcement. The tone of the interrogation shifted, but Herminda stood by her version, unaware that the technical analysis had already begun to reveal a much deeper level of her involvement. Securing a search warrant for full access to Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s digital data allowed investigators to look into the private chats he had worked so hard to conceal. Despite his efforts to wipe his message history before the interview, cyber forensics experts recovered archives from Snapchat and Instagram. The restored correspondence confirmed that the affair with Rolon-Barole was far from a one-time thing. Their connection had been ongoing since May 2023 and was quite regular. The messages detailed meetups at Chicago hotels and plans to spend time together outside of their shifts at Avanti Engineering. Analyzing this data allowed detectives to build an exact timeline of Nathaniel's life over the previous 4 months. It became clear he was living a double life, carefully hiding his travels from Herminda. However, the correspondence with Zorita in the final weeks before the tragedy began to take on an unsettling tone. Mentions of a certain danger and the need to be cautious started appearing in the texts. Not just regarding the affair, but in reference to external threats. Zorita, based on her replies, didn't seem to grasp what he was talking about and often steered the conversation back to everyday topics. Simultaneously, investigators studied the outgoing traffic from Nathaniel's own phone. They discovered he belonged to several private groups where security measures and methods of evasion were discussed. But the most significant discovery awaited detectives in a folder of blocked or hidden contacts. There sat an account that wasn't linked to Zorita or any of his known colleagues. This specific contact was the most active in the days leading up to the crime on Concord Avenue. Nathaniel had immediately deleted every message from this user, signaling the extreme importance of that communication. Detectives set out to identify the owner of that profile, which led them to the most unexpected twist in the entire investigation. The Romeoville Police Department Cyber Unit hit a turning point when experts began tracing the IP addresses from which Nathaniel Huey Jr. was receiving directives. A mysterious account with which he communicated under the strictest secrecy was posing as a high-ranking member of a powerful criminal syndicate. The messages were filled with professional terminology, threats, and specific demands for the completion of certain tasks. Nathaniel, based on his responses, was fully convinced he was in the service of an influential criminal organization that watched his every move and threatened the lives of his loved ones if he failed to comply. The breakthrough came when technical specialists matched the access points used by the syndicate representative to the home Wi-Fi network at Nathaniel's residence in Streamwood. It turned out that the messages from the supposed dangerous criminals were being sent from devices physically located in the very same room where Nathaniel himself slept. Tracking the serial numbers of the smartphones and tablets led to a single owner, Herminda Palomo. It was revealed that for nearly 2 years, the woman had been running a complex psychological scheme known as catfishing. She had created dozens of fake social media profiles, meticulously mimicking the structure of a criminal organization. Herminda used specialized voice-changing apps and IP masking so that Nathaniel would never suspect the deception. For years, she manipulated his fears, forcing him to believe he was a high-value agent who was constantly in danger. Every detail of this digital reality was calculated, from the specific slang to staged photos of weapons and stacks of cash. Investigators established that Herminda essentially held total control over her partner's mind, turning him into a tool for her own objectives. The full weight of the syndicate Nathaniel feared so much was contained entirely within the smartphone of the woman sitting across the dinner table from him. When Herminda Palomo learned about Nathaniel's actual involvement with Zorita Bartale, she didn't resort to an open display of jealousy. Instead, she integrated her rival into her digital game. An analysis of the messages from September 2023 showed how the syndicate began to gradually turn Nathaniel against the Bartolome-Rolon family. In their correspondence, Zorita was branded a mole, a law enforcement informant planted within the organization specifically to gather evidence against Nathaniel and hand him over to federal authorities. Melinda, acting as the high-ranking leadership of the group, began systematically convincing the man that his only chance to avoid a life sentence or death at the hands of hitmen was a preemptive strike. The syndicate issued a direct order: eliminate Zorita and any potential witnesses in her home, including her sons, to leave no loose ends. The messages included clear tactical instructions. Herminda advised Nathaniel to wear a mask, use gloves, and specifically to cut the window screen so the police would write it off as a routine burglary committed by inexperienced thieves. Special emphasis in the orders was placed on staging vandalism. Herminda instructed Nathaniel to buy a can of spray paint and deface the walls of the home to create a false trail leading to local teen gangs. The investigation discovered that Nathaniel followed every single point of this plan without question. He believed that the eyes of the organization were everywhere, and that any mistake would lead to retribution against Herminda, whom he viewed as a completely innocent victim. In this way, the woman orchestrated a mass crime against an entire family, including the 2 sons, using jealousy as the primary motive and her partner's psyche as the instrument of execution. Every action Nathaniel took that fateful night was merely the exact execution of a script written by his domestic partner. The reconstruction of the events on the night of September 16, 2023 was recovered by investigators down to the minute by matching the timeline of digital activity with data from license plate recognition cameras. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Nathaniel Huey Jr.'s light-colored sedan entered the residential sector of Romeoville. At 3:17 a.m., cameras captured the vehicle approaching Concord Avenue. Nathaniel Huey didn't act like a spontaneous thief. He acted like he was completing a tactical mission, leaving Palomo in the car to monitor the area and maintain contact through Encrypted messaging, he headed toward House 500. According to the plan he believed was an order from a criminal syndicate. The first task was to stage a break-in. The man used a cutting tool to damage the screens on 2 front windows, creating a visual trail for the police. However, the actual entry occurred through the rear kitchen door, which the homeowners had left unlocked. Inside the home, the perpetrator first encountered the 3 dogs. Ballistics determined that the shots were fired at point-blank range to minimize noise and prevent the animals from raising an alarm. However, the sounds of the gunfire and the weight of the German shepherds hitting the floor woke Alberto Rolon. The head of the household stepped out of the bedroom and into the hallway where he confronted the armed Nathaniel. Alberto did not have a chance to engage in a physical struggle. He was struck and attempted to retreat back into the bedroom where his wife and sons were located. Nathaniel Y kept moving forward. Investigators discovered bullet holes in the bedroom door. The perpetrator had fired through the closed door, striking those inside blindly. Once Alberto's resistance was neutralized, Nathaniel entered the room and fired the final rounds at Zorita, Barto and the 2 sons. The total count of rounds fired exceeded 20. After completing the primary portion of the crime, Nathaniel proceeded to follow the instructions for misleading the investigation. He took out the spray paint he had purchased beforehand and applied chaotic lines and symbols to the walls in the hallway and living room. This action was designed to lead the police down a false trail pointing toward a local gang raid or an act of random vandalism. The entire process, from entering the home to returning to the vehicle, took less than 30 minutes. At 3:50 a.m., the suspect's sedan was captured, leaving Romeoville. Throughout this entire window, Herminda Palomo remained online, confirming every stage of the operation via encrypted communication channels. By dawn, the pair had already returned to Streamwood, attempting to settle back into their daily routine, while the remains of the Bartoli Roland family went undiscovered for nearly 36 hours. On September 19, 2023, following a second visit from detectives and the seizure of their electronics, Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Linda Palomo fled Illinois. Herminda's family, unaware of her role in the crime, reported her kidnapped to the police, claiming her life was in danger. However, cell tower pings and traffic cameras showed the pair moving southwest on I-44 of their own free will. A day later, after traveling over 550 m, the fugitives stopped in the city of Catoosa, Oklahoma. Surveillance cameras at a local Walmart captured them at noon on September 20. The footage shows Nathaniel and Irma Linda choosing groceries together and speaking calmly. The woman moved freely through the aisles and made no attempt to reach out for help, completely debunking the kidnapping theory. The situation reached its breaking point in the parking lot when patrol officers identified their vehicle. Nathaniel initiated a high-speed pursuit, maneuvering across the highway. The chase lasted 10 minutes until the sedan crashed into a concrete barrier and caught fire. Before officers could approach, the flame engulfed interior, 2 gunshots rang out from inside. Medical examiners determined that Nathaniel Huey Jr. and Herminda Palomo succumbed to gunshot wounds to the head before the fire filled the cabin. Nathaniel took his partner's life before he ended his own. The handgun recovered from the burned-out car was a perfect ballistic match for the weapon used in the crime against the Bartow Roland family on Concord Avenue. During the analysis of the equipment seized in Streamwood, cyber forensics experts uncovered the mechanism of manipulation. For years, Herminda had utilized IP masking software and created dozens of fake syndicate accounts. Drafts of every order Nathaniel received were found in her cloud storage, including the specific instructions for staging the break-in and using the spray paint. On September 22, 2023, the case was officially closed. The investigation concluded that Nathaniel Huey Jr. was the sole physical perpetrator, while Herminda Palomo was the architect and coordinator of the mass crime. The tragedy was the result of long-term psychological control and digital falsification, which the perpetrator had become a hostage to. House number 500 remained empty, and the Bartow and Rolon families were laid to rest in closed caskets.